Every human soul craves connection, but not every soul knows how to receive it. Some people have built walls so high that when you try to get close, it feels like you're knocking on stone. If you want to keep someone who avoids closeness craving you without making them pull away, you can't break down those walls with force. You must become the presence that makes those walls unnecessary. When you walk into a room, don't carry the energy of demand, carry the energy of presence. Pressure makes anyone feel trapped, but presence makes people feel seen. And the human heart, even the avoidant heart, longs to be seen more than it longs for anything else. Respecting their space doesn't mean abandoning your own truth. It means you give them the gift of freedom while you stand strong in your own power. You don't chase, you don't cling, and you don't shrink, you radiate. And when you radiate, they will feel the pull, not because you're trying to grab them, but because your energy becomes magnetic. Your communication must be more than words. It must be energy. Words backed by neediness feel heavy. Words backed by certainty feel safe. When you speak from a place of calm strength, you create a field where their nervous system can finally relax. And in that relaxation, craving begins. Not craving for escape, but craving for more of you. But here's the key: you cannot give what you do not own. If you want them to feel safe in your presence, you must first become safe within yourself. Anchor yourself in emotional certainty. Do not be the storm that they run from. Be the lighthouse they are drawn to. When they pull back, you don't collapse. You hold steady, and they will return, not because you begged, but because you became irresistible. Now, attraction is not about smothering, it's about creating contrast. Show them intimacy, but also show them independence. Show them warmth, but also show them the fire of your own path. When they see you can love them deeply without losing yourself, they will start to lean in. That's when curiosity turns to desire, and desire turns to craving. Finally, never forget, love is not a trap. It's not an ultimatum. It's an invitation. If you present love as freedom, it becomes irresistible. If you present love as obligation, it becomes suffocating. So open your arms not to catch them, but to welcome them. Not to cage them, but to inspire them to stay. When you live this way, you don't just keep them craving you. You awaken in them the deepest truth of all. That love is not something to run from, but something to run toward. To keep someone who fears closeness craving you without making them pull away, you must first understand the difference between pressure and presence. Pressure is an energy that suffocates. It is the energy of need, demand, and urgency. Presence, on the other hand, is the energy of being fully alive in the moment, calm, grounded, and unshakable. When you lead with presence instead of pressure, you shift the entire dynamic of connection, because people who have avoidant tendencies are not running from love itself. They are running from the weight of expectation. They are not rejecting intimacy at the core. They are rejecting the invisible strings that they think come attached to it. Think about it. When you walk into someone's life carrying pressure, they feel your agenda before you even open your mouth. It's in your tone, in your body language, in your eyes. It says, I need you to respond a certain way so I can feel okay. That message activates every defense mechanism they've built, and suddenly their instinct to retreat is stronger than their desire to connect. But when you show up with presence, anchored ease, unattached to outcomes, what they feel is safety. They feel you are not here to control them, not here to force them into closeness, but to stand in your truth and allow them the space to breathe. And paradoxically, the moment they feel that safety, they lean in. Presence is about energy more than action. You can say the exact same words from two different states of being and get two completely different reactions. I missed you can land as suffocating if it carries desperation, or it can land as a gentle invitation if it carries warmth and steadiness. And avoidant is not repelled by love. They are repelled by the unspoken demand hidden beneath love when it comes from fear. This is why your presence matters more than your words. Your energy communicates louder than your sentences ever could. When you cultivate presence, you become someone who is not swayed by the push and pull of another person's fear. If they retreat, you don't chase. If they come closer, you don't cling. You stay steady. And that steadiness becomes magnetic. Imagine a flame. If you try to grab it, it burns you. If you run from it, you lose its warmth. But if you sit still in its glow, you're drawn to it. Presence works the same way. It is the calm confidence that says, I am here, I am whole, and I do not need to force this connection to prove my worth. That message is irresistible to someone whose greatest fear is being consumed. Presence is not passive. It is powerful. It requires you to master your inner state, to ground yourself in your own worth so deeply that you no longer communicate from a place of lack. Because when you are whole, you don't need them to validate you. You don't need them to close the gap to make you feel enough. And when you no longer need, your love becomes pure offering rather than transaction. That's when they feel free to move closer. So leading with presence means becoming deeply aware of the energy you bring into every interaction. It means breathing before you react, centering yourself before you speak, and remembering that your power lies not in how hard you push, but in how fully you embody calm certainty. It is in that state that you make the avoidant feel what they rarely feel, safe enough to crave more of you. Respecting their space while holding your ground is one of the greatest balancing acts you will ever master in a relationship with someone who tends to pull away. It requires wisdom, discipline, and a deep sense of your own worth. Too many people make the mistake of thinking that respecting space means disappearing, shrinking, or silencing themselves. They withdraw so much that they lose their own essence in the process. That's not respect, that's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment doesn't inspire closeness, it deepens disconnection. The real power is learning how to honor another person's need for freedom without ever dimming your own light. When someone with avoidant tendencies asks for space, what they are often seeking is relief from the fear of being consumed. They fear that connection means losing themselves, losing their autonomy, or being trapped in a dynamic where their individuality doesn't matter. If you respond by panicking, by chasing, or by begging for reassurance, you confirm their fear. You send the message that your love will cost them their independence. But if you respond with calm strength, if you stand firm in who you are while giving them breathing room, you flip the script entirely. Instead of feeling suffocated, they feel respected. Instead of running, they start to wonder why your energy feels so different from everything they've known. Holding your ground means refusing to compromise your values, your needs, or your sense of self in the name of keeping them close. It means continuing to show up as your authentic self, not adjusting every word or action just to avoid rocking the boat. Avoidants are sensitive to control, but they are also drawn to strength. They don't want a partner who disappears at the first sign of distance. They want someone solid enough to remain grounded while they figure out their own emotions. When you embody that strength, you communicate a silent but powerful truth. I am here, I value connection, but I don't need to collapse to prove my love. There is a deep spiritual principle at work here. Love without respect is not love, it's dependency. And respect flows in both directions. You respect their need for space, and in turn, you require them to respect your need for presence. This balance creates the kind of dynamic that allows love to grow without chains. If you give too much space, you risk turning the relationship into a void. If you cling too tightly, you risk turning it into a cage. But if you hold your ground, you create a sacred middle ground, a place where love breathes, where freedom and closeness coexist. Imagine yourself as a tree. The roots go deep, unshakable. The branches spread wide, giving shade and beauty. When the wind blows, the tree does not chase after the breeze, nor does it collapse in fear. It stands. It bends when necessary, but it never breaks. That's the essence of holding your ground. You are the tree, they are the wind. Sometimes they will come closer, sometimes they will pull away. But your strength is in remaining rooted. Knowing your worth does not depend on how close or far they stand, and paradoxically, that steadiness makes them return again and again, because deep down, even the most avoidant soul longs for a safe place to rest. So respecting their space while holding your ground is not a strategy, it is a way of being. It is the embodiment of love without fear, respect without self-sacrifice, and strength without control. It tells the other person, you are free, and so am I. That message disarms the defenses that usually keep them running. And when those defenses come down, they begin to experience love not as something that threatens their freedom, but as something that expands it. That is the kind of love they crave, even if they don't yet know how to ask for it. Communicating with energy, not force, is the difference between connection that blossoms and connection that withers. Too often, we think communication is about the words we say, when in reality, it's about the energy behind those words. You can say the most beautiful sentence, filled with poetic affection, but if it carries the weight of desperation, fear, or control, it will land like a burden. On the other hand, you can say something incredibly simple, just a few words, and if it carries the energy of calm, certainty, and genuine care, it will pierce through the walls of even the most guarded heart. When you're dealing with someone who tends to pull away, words are often triggers because they are listening less to the content and more to the intent. They are scanning for hidden demands, for subtle expectations, for the invisible leash they've felt from others in the past. This is why they react strongly not to what you say, but to how you say it. Forceful communication carries an invisible pressure that tells them, you must respond, you must reassure me, you must behave in a way that keeps me safe. That pressure suffocates, even when cloaked in sweetness. But when your communication carries the energy of openness and freedom, it tells them, you are safe to be you, and I am safe to be me. That is when connection begins to feel inviting instead of threatening. Energy and communication comes from your state of being. If your heart is anchored, if your mind is clear, if your spirit is calm, that energy seeps into your tone, your body language, and even the pauses between your words. A steady tone communicates safety. A relaxed posture communicates acceptance. A genuine smile communicates openness. None of these require force, yet all of them send a louder message than 1,000 needy sentences ever could. You don't need to convince them with words. You need to embody the vibration of safety, strength, and love without attachment. That vibration is what bypasses their defenses and reaches the part of them that craves closeness. Think of forceful communication as trying to push a locked door open. The harder you push, the more resistance you encounter. But energetic communication is like sunlight coming through a window. It doesn't demand entry, it simply shines and the space naturally fills with warmth. When you speak with energy instead of force, your words feel like sunlight instead of pressure. They are absorbed, not resisted. They inspire leaning in, not running away. This doesn't mean you avoid honesty or vulnerability. It means you deliver truth in a way that feels safe instead of suffocating. Saying, "I'd love to spend time with you," carries a very different energy than, "Why don't you ever make time for me?" The first is an invitation. The second is an accusation. One expands the space, the other tightens it. One creates desire, the other creates distance. Communication with energy is about choosing words and tones that open doors rather than close them. The secret is that your energy is contagious. If you come to a conversation anxious, that anxiety will spread. If you come calm, grounded, and centered, that state will influence the other person's nervous system and invite them into the same calmness. Even silence, when filled with warmth, becomes a form of communication. A pause, a steady gaze, a soft laugh, all of these can communicate more than long explanations, because what truly draws someone in is not the complexity of your message, but the purity of your energy. So, to communicate with energy, not force, is to recognize that the real dialogue is not happening at the level of words, it's happening at the level of presence. When you master this, you no longer have to chase connection through force. You become connection. And from that place, even someone who has spent their whole life avoiding closeness will feel something they cannot resist. The safety of being with someone who does not need to control them in order to love them. Anchoring yourself in emotional certainty is the foundation that keeps connection alive with someone who fears intimacy. When you lack inner stability, every move they make becomes a trigger. If they pull back, you panic. If they get quiet, you spiral into self-doubt. If they don't respond right away, you start questioning your worth. This instability creates an invisible storm that the other person can feel, and instead of drawing them closer, it convinces them that connection equals chaos. But when you anchor yourself in certainty, you become the calm in the storm, the steady force that makes them feel safer with you than without you. Emotional certainty doesn't mean you never feel insecure. It means you know how to return to your center no matter what is happening around you. It's the ability to feel the waves of fear rise and still choose not to act from that fear. It's the strength to allow another person their freedom without losing your grounding. When you cultivate this, you stop demanding reassurance and start radiating stability. And stability is magnetic, especially to someone who feels unsettled by closeness. Think about what happens when you interact with someone who is unshakably calm. Their energy slows your heartbeat, relaxes your body, and makes you feel more at ease without them saying a word. That's what emotional certainty does. It regulates not only you, but also the person you're with. An avoidant, who is so used to relationships feeling unpredictable or overwhelming, finds themselves drawn in by this kind of energy. It feels different, it feels safe, and safety awakens desire. Anchoring yourself in certainty requires you to separate your worth from their behavior. If they need space, it doesn't mean you're not enough. If they go quiet, it doesn't mean they've stopped caring. If they pull away, it doesn't mean the connection is broken. It simply means they are working through their own patterns. When you no longer personalize their distance, you stop reacting in ways that push them further away. You stay grounded, steady, and open. That steadiness becomes the very thing that calls them back. This certainty also allows you to communicate differently. Instead of lashing out, you respond with patience. Instead of begging for closeness, you create it naturally through your presence. Instead of accusing them, you invite them. And because your words come from a place of stability, they land with impact instead of resistance. At its core, emotional certainty is a spiritual practice. It's remembering that your worth is not determined by how someone else shows up for you. It's realizing that love given from fullness is far more powerful than love given from need. When you live anchored, you embody the truth that you are whole with or without their immediate closeness. And in that truth, you become irresistible, not because you chase, but because you stand so rooted in your power that they cannot help but crave the shelter of your presence. Creating magnetic contrast is about embodying both intimacy and independence in a way that sparks desire rather than fear. When you lean only into intimacy, constantly seeking closeness, you risk overwhelming someone who already struggles with space. When you lean only into independence, always distant and detached, you starve the relationship of connection. But when you blend both, when you show that you can give love deeply without losing yourself, you create a polarity that keeps them intrigued and craving more. This contrast is what transforms connection from something that feels like a burden into something that feels irresistible. Attraction thrives on contrast. Think of a flame. It draws us in because it is both light and heat, both movement and stillness. In relationships, the same principle applies. If all you bring is intensity, the avoidant will feel consumed. If all you bring is detachment, they will feel unwanted. But if you can switch between closeness and space with ease, you send a powerful message. I can love you without trapping you. and I can be free without abandoning you. That message is exactly what disarms their fears. This balance is not about playing games or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about living in the fullness of who you are. It's knowing that you can be tender, vulnerable, and deeply connected in one moment, and in the next moment, stand strong in your independence, pursuing your passions and nurturing your individuality. That duality creates a rhythm in the relationship. It gives the avoidant space to breathe without losing the sense that they are still wanted. It gives them intimacy without the fear of being consumed. When you embody magnetic contrast, you become unpredictable in the most beautiful way. They can't label you as clingy because you have your own life, your own fire, your own vision. They can't label you as cold because you open your heart generously when you're with them. You keep them leaning in because they never feel trapped, yet they never feel neglected. This is not manipulation. It's alignment with human truth. Every soul craves both freedom and connection. When you embody both, you become the rare person who meets them on both levels. Magnetic contrast also elevates your own energy. When you are deeply independent, you bring vitality, curiosity, and fresh experiences into the relationship. When you are deeply intimate, you bring warmth, closeness, and safety. Together, these create a cycle that keeps love alive. Instead of the relationship growing stale or predictable, it stays alive with curiosity and desire. They begin to crave you not just for the comfort you bring, but for the spark you ignite. Ultimately, contrast is about embodying wholeness. It's about showing that you don't need to choose between being loving and being free. You can be both. And when you live that truth, the avoidant no longer sees love as a threat to their independence. They see it as an expansion of it. That shift turns their instinct to pull away into a desire to move closer, because with you, closeness doesn't cost them their freedom, it amplifies it. Let love be an invitation, not a trap. This is the most powerful shift you can make when you want someone who fears closeness to lean in instead of run away. Love becomes heavy when it feels like a contract, when it comes wrapped in obligations, when it demands constant proof. That weight makes anyone pull back, but for someone with avoidant patterns, it becomes unbearable. Yet love in its purest form is not heavy, it is liberating. It is not about control, it is about expansion. When you offer love as an open invitation rather than a cage, you transform the experience of connection into something they crave instead of something they fear. An invitation carries no pressure. It is simply a door left open, a hand extended, a light shining in the window. It says, I would love for you to join me, but you are free to choose. That freedom is what makes the invitation so powerful. When love feels like a choice, not a duty, the avoidant can finally relax. They can step forward because they want to, not because they have to. And when someone chooses love freely, that love carries a depth that forced closeness will never reach. A trap, on the other hand, is when love becomes conditional. It's when every act of connection is followed by an expectation. If I give this, you must give that. If I open up, you must respond the same way. If I love you, you owe me the same in return. These invisible strings turn love into a transaction. And because the avoidant is hypersensitive to control, they sense those strings even before you tug on them. The moment they feel it, they associate love with suffocation and start looking for escape routes, not because they don't care, but because they fear being consumed. When love is an invitation, you hold space for closeness without demanding it. You make it safe for them to step forward at their own pace. You show through your actions and energy that your love is not about taking something from them, but about offering something to them. This is the difference between saying, why don't you ever come closer? And saying, well, I love being close to you when we share these moments. One creates guilt, the other creates desire. One shuts the door, the other leaves it wide open. Living this way requires trust, not just in them, but in yourself. It's the trust that your worth does not depend on how quickly or how often someone steps through that door. It's the trust that if you remain authentic, radiant, and whole, the right people will be drawn to you without force. This trust frees you from the need to trap, and when you no longer need to trap, your love becomes magnetic. The deepest truth is this: love is never about control. Real love is choice. Real love is invitation. And when you embody that, the avoidant no longer sees love as something to run from, but as the very thing that sets them free. So as we bring this journey to a close, remember that true connection is not about force, not about control, and never about losing yourself. It's about embodying presence, honoring space, speaking with energy, standing anchored in certainty, living with magnetic contrast, and offering love as an open invitation. When you live from this place, you don't just keep someone craving you, you awaken in them the deepest truth, that love can be safe, expansive, and life-giving. Carry this wisdom into every relationship. Let it transform not only how you love others, but how you love yourself. And watch how doors that once seemed closed begin to open wide. Thank you for giving me the honor of sharing these words with you today. May you leave with strength in your heart, clarity in your soul, and the courage to create love that never needs to chase, because it naturally inspires others to stay.